So I want to just talk really quickly about background. I know that some of you on the meeting are very familiar with the federal Striving Readers Grants that the Kentucky Department of Education was awarded, and some of you are not. So we wanted to give you just a little background as we got started. We have going on right now a Striving Readers Comprehensive Literacy Grant. We call that CIRCLE, and the Kentucky Department of Education was awarded that in the fall of 2017. And CIRCLE was awarded to 45 districts in the spring of 2018. Year one implementation for CIRCLE was July 1st of 18. And CIRCLE is currently in their third and final year of required implementation. It ends on September 30th of 2021. I know that some of you people, some people on here are from CIRCLE districts, and I want to let you know that if you choose to apply for KyCL Round 2, you will be applying as a continuation grant. And so I want you to just be listening for that. As we're talking today, we're going to mention the difference between continuation grant and somebody coming in brand new to a Striving Readers Grant. So just be listening for that word. Also wanted to just give you a little bit of information about KyCL. The Kentucky Department of Education was awarded that in the fall of 2019. We did award 11 districts in the spring of 20. They started implementation July 1st of 20. And so we have people that are currently in round one. But if you are currently in round one of KyCL, you cannot apply for KyCL round 2. So just want to make sure you know that. This KyCL grant round 2, it's open to current CIRCLE districts and to new districts. Also wanted to just show you what the other training dates are going to look like. And I want you to notice that, no, excuse me just a minute. No, it's not. We'll talk about those in just a minute. But what I want to talk to you about is the day. Let's talk about what the day is going to be like today and tomorrow. We're going to spend some time talking to you about the grant today, and it's going to be approximately 9 to 11. There's going to be a little bit of a break for lunch between 11 and 12. And then this afternoon, we are going to be giving you time to watch vendors that are videos that our vendors have sent. We're going to leave this Teams meeting link open all day from 12 to 3 today, and then we are also going to do the same thing tomorrow. We're going to open the Teams meeting up. It'll be open from 9 to 3. However, you can use the link in the chat box to go to the videos that the vendors have sent, and you can watch them on your own time. I really suggest that you take the time to watch all of the videos. You write down any questions you have for the vendors. The vendor contact information is within the links as well in this PowerPoint. And you can contact any of the vendors after watching their video to ask questions. Some of you may have come to this meeting with a plan. You already have a plan for a vendor that you want to use or you're thinking about. But even in that case, I still suggest that you take the time to look through the videos. You might get some new ideas. You might get some, it might change your plan a little bit. So just take the time to watch those. And like I said, our meeting today will probably end about 11 or before, and then you will have the rest of today and all day tomorrow on your own time to watch the videos that we've linked to the chat box, and we'll talk about again towards the end of this day. So let's talk about the goal of the grant. So the goal of this grant is to support schools in improving reading and writing achievement for all learners from birth to grade 12 by providing professional learning for teachers, early learning providers, and families in comprehensive literacy, and to provide the resources needed to implement literacy strategies to support a robust literacy environment, including balanced literacy plan. KyCL is a professional learning grant, and the goal is to build teacher capacity of comprehensive literacy. Districts are required to provide professional learning for each level: early, elementary, middle, and high. We will talk about that a little more as we go along. But that is the goal of this grant. It is specifically a grant for comprehensive literacy. And what does comprehensive mean? It means all grades. It means birth to grade 12. And so KyCL focuses on your plans for reaching children who are just being born all the way through grade 12. So when you're thinking about this grant, you want to consider how are those birth to age 3 children in your community going to be served? How are you going to reach out to the families before the children ever come to school? And which early child care and community partners are you going to need to accomplish this comprehensive piece of your grant requirement? Here's the allocation of KyCL funds. KyCL is a 3-year grant. The round 2 is a 3-year grant. That's what you would be applying for. And there is a size chart that's located at the end of the posted RFA. But if you'll take a look at it, there you are listed. If you go to that chart, you'll see if your district is considered small, medium, or large. And you'll see the amount of money that's given each year. This grant, you will be given money for 3 years. And in the bottom, the far right column, it tells you the total that you will be able to receive throughout the life of the grant. You are also required to use your funds in a certain manner. So with the funds that you're awarded, 16% of those funds have to go to professional learning and support birth to age 12. That should say to age 12. Oops, sorry about that. birth to age 5. So I want to go back and make sure I'm clear on that. 16% has to be birth to age 5. 42% has to be for kindergarten to grade 5, and 42% of your funds have to be used to support professional learning for middle and high school, and you divide that 42%, 21 for middle and 21 for high. So there is a specific manner in which you have to spend your funds. Again, that 16% is for birth to age 5. In order to be eligible, it's all about your high school and whether your high school meets the eligibility requirements. The 2018-19 qualifying data form that is used in the on a KDE website, and if you click here, and it's also in the RFA link where you can click, it'll tell you what your free and reduced rate is. If your high school is 65% or greater free and reduced lunch, then you are eligible for this grant. Each district in this grant can only submit one application, and that's regardless of the number of feeder systems within the district. And that is different from Circle. So if you are someone coming from Circle, please make note that you can only choose to submit an application for one of your feeder systems within your district. And a feeder system, just so we're clear on what that is all of the schools that feed into your high school. That is the daycares, the preschools, Head Starts that feed into your high school, the elementaries that feed into that high school, whether it be one or more than one, the middle schools that feed into that high school, whether it be one or more than one. So it's everything that feeds into that high school. So if there are daycares, preschool classes, Head Start that have children that will be eventually going to your elementaries, that feed into your middles, that feed into your high, they are considered a part of the feeder system. This grant has to serve the entire continuum. So partners that address birth to age 5 need to clearly be included in this plan. And you need to make sure that within your RFA, in the literacy plan that you submit, you need to give a very detailed plan for the entire feeder system. Here's a few other grant eligibility requirements. Please make sure please, please make sure that you send a blinded copy of everything. When you get ready to submit this, you're going to need to submit a copy with all signatures, all information about the schools, the names, but you will have to submit a second that is completely blinded. And I will tell you that if your submission is not blinded, if we see names within the one, even if part of it's blinded, but not all of it's blinded, then it is deemed non-responsive and it cannot be scored. So please be very, very careful with that. Look through, get ready in advance for what you're going to submit. Maybe even have other people look through because it's easy to miss a name. But I will tell you that if it's not completely blinded, the second copy, that it will not be scored. And so that's very, very important for you to remember. Also remember that significant deficits in literacy and at least 3 of the 4 levels, birth to age 5, K through 5 middle high, those play into your eligibility. You need to agree that an early education providers will be engaged as active members of the district literacy team and participate in development and implementation of the school literacy plans, which is new to a lot of districts. A lot of districts don't always have early education providers within their teams, and that is a requirement. You're also required to secure letters of partnership from those early child care providers and community partners within this grant. Danielle?
So let's talk a little bit about how you create those plans. The literacy needs assessment, in Kentucky we call it the PERCS document, is used to create your literacy plan. We want to make sure that you understand that you don't have to submit the PERCS document and all your answers to it with your RFA. What we want you to do is look at the PERCS document and put together a team that evaluates your needs. What do you need as far as professional learning is concerned? And then create a district literacy plan by using that document. And then you can collaborate with the providers to determine how they can meet your needs. And then you'll reference that in the plan. So the PERCS document is very helpful in developing a district literacy plan. Things to consider with the literacy PERCS. You'll need to determine who will be a part of the needs assessment. I suggest not just having administrators take a look at it, but also include some teachers. A timeline, compilation of information. And once again, the PERCS document is not submitted with the RFA, but it is a valuable document in planning for the district and school literacy plans. And then there is a link there where you can find more information. Now let's talk about your district literacy plan. The district literacy plan should be used as a guide to write the KyCL Round 2 request for application. Included in your literacy plan are the needs that you have that need to be addressed, and you can find that through the PERCS process, as we just discussed. You need to include a plan for birth through grade 12. And so that's a little odd for most of us. We don't consider birth, but you need to think about that early childhood component. Also, include internal and external partners and explain how they will work with the district to support and implement the plan. And we'll talk more about partners in just a few minutes, and we'll talk about who those partners might be. Include characteristics of comprehensive literacy and how the district will address these. And you'll also include instructional strategies that you need to incorporate for at-risk students and those with disabilities. The district and school literacy plans should be aligned to the KAS for reading and writing. You should include professional learning plans based on literacy needs for each level. That's birth to 5, elementary, and middle high. Include your assessment plan to screen, diagnose, and monitor progress. This is very important, and so on the PowerPoint, you'll see this is highlighted. Your district literacy plan should be submitted with the grant application. So what you'll do is you'll create a plan that encompasses what the district needs as a whole. But then after the grants are awarded, if you are awarded the grant, you will develop school literacy plans for each school in the feeder system. And this is comprehensive and integrated. We'd like for you to include a balanced assessment plan. What assessment plan do you currently have in place? What universal screener do you use? Do you use a dyslexia screener? Diagnostic assessments? What progress monitoring assessments do you use? What needs to be added to assure your plan is balanced? And how is the district using assessment data? All of those questions you'll need to try to answer in your plans.
So now I'm going to talk to you about the teacher cohorts. KyCL was created to take into consideration that research that shows that teachers need extensive professional learning over a long period of time and be supported in their implementation in order to really make a change in teacher practice. What's different about this grant is this isn't just days of professional learning that people are supposed to be gathering on a professional learning log. It is a focused plan that they will be getting professional learning, and they will be going back to that professional learning over several years. They will get coaching support, implementation support. It'll be a focus of their school PLC meetings. There'll be lots of discussion so that in the end, teachers really do have a change in practice. And one of the ways that this is talked about in KyCL is through cohorts. And that is that you will have 30% of your teachers, your early adopters, that will be a part of your cohort 1. Then in the first year. Then in year 2, you'll add an additional 50% of teachers. And that'll get you up to 80% of your teachers getting professional learning focused on reading and writing. And then the last year, cohort 3 will begin getting professional learning, and that is the remaining 20% of teachers. By the end of this grant, by the end of the 3-year grant, 100% of the teachers in your buildings will be included in these.
Dana, you're muted.
Danielle, where did I get muted?
I don't know, but you were muted.
Thank you for that. So that gave you lots of time to look at this chart. So I'm sure that was a benefit. Sorry about that. I admitted somebody into the meeting while I was talking, and my cursor probably went up to mute as well. Okay. Sorry about that.
Okay, that's okay.
So just to go back and let you know that this grant is set up using cohorts. So 30% of your teachers year 1, year 2. 50% more are added. So by year 2, 80% of teachers are receiving professional learning. And then by the last year, 100% of your teachers are receiving professional learning focused on comprehensive literacy, reading, and writing. I will tell you that some schools in Circle chose to, instead of using a cohort model, they chose to use have teachers that more teachers start than the 30%. And that is something that you can consider. However, I want you to know that the goal is that of this type of model is that the early adopters can get very excited about the professional learning. We hope that they can get other people excited to join in, and that they can lead others as others begin the professional learning and the implementation. So I really want you to think about what is the best model for sustaining the professional learning focus and implementation throughout the project and as the grant ends. So that's something for you to think about. The cohort model is listed in the KyCL grant. However, you can, if you're awarded, you can talk to us about including more teachers and changing the way that looks a little bit. So that's just something for you to keep in mind.
Diana, there is a question in the chat box that I think everybody would probably like the answer to. It says, does the 100% include FMD and guidance?
So yes, it includes FMD guidance. If your guidance counselors work with children at all, and they work with children on literacy. For example, there are some elementary guidance counselors who go into the class. They use books and literature to talk about their guidance topics, and so some of them may benefit greatly from having the trainings. Some of them, in some schools, there are also guidance counselors who help do intervention groups. And so that is just something for you to think about what makes sense at your school. If your guidance counselor is teaching kids and having a stronger knowledge of what good literacy instruction looks like would be important for them, then yes, include them. However, if you have a guidance counselor at a high school and their main job is to schedule classes and to talk to children about their career paths, it might not be the tightest tie for them, and so they could be excluded. That would be something that once you're awarded, we would sit down and talk about, and you would tell us your rationale, and we would talk through all of that. FMD teachers absolutely can benefit from literacy strategies, and so they definitely would be included in that. When you think about high school, you're going to need to be really specific in making your plan, because this question brings up what a lot of people want to say as time goes on. A lot of people want to wait until cohort 3 to bring in their shop teachers or their, some special area teachers. So really be thinking about how they can be involved in this, because yes, they do need literacy instruction as well. And so they would need to be included. So what we're going to talk about right now is new. So if you are brand new, if you do not have a current federal Striving Readers grant, if you do not have Circle right now, then what we're going to look at right now is for you. And I want you to take a look at the professional learning requirements of this grant. It is a professional learning grant, and so you'll see that there is a lot of professional learning hours that are required. So in cohort 1, any teacher that is in cohort 1 would get 60 hours this year, 40 the second, and 24 the third year, for a total of 124 hours of professional learning over the 3-year grant. If you have teachers that are starting year 2 and they're in cohort 2, they're going to get 40 that second year. They're going to get 24 the third year, for a total of 64 hours of professional learning. And then in cohort 3, they will be coming in the last year and they will get 24 hours of professional learning that third year. If you choose to have teachers join cohort 1, for example, if you're a smaller district and you want everybody to be involved in cohort 1, then just remember, if they start the first year, then the cohort 1, all of those hours for year 1, 2, and 3 will be what they're expected to earn. So keep that in mind when you're kind of thinking through that. Also, I just want to make sure that I point out very clearly again, this is professional learning focused on reading and writing instruction, comprehensive literacy. The next thing I want to talk about is continuation plans, and this is for Circle districts. So if your district was a part of Circle, then we're going to talk about what you can choose when you're looking at this grant. Continuation is mentioned in the RFA quite a few times, and you can notice that it looks a little different. So you could choose to use a cohort model with a new area of comprehensive literacy. For example, if you were really focused in on reading and you all spent lots of time working on reading, and now you want to fold in writing, and it's something that's new, it's something that it hasn't been your focus through Circle, and you want to focus in on writing, then you might want to use a cohort model because you're starting something new. However, another option is you can continue the professional learning that was started in Circle. You can work with your vendors that you use, professional learning providers that you used in Circle, and you can continue what you've been working on. Or you could do a combination. You could support everything that you started in Circle, and you can also be folding in a new area of comprehensive literacy. So those are some things for you to think about. So let's see what that looks like with hours. So again, continuation really is targeted at people who currently have Circle. And if you currently have Circle and you decide that you want to use the cohort model for something new, then you can see that your chart for the hours is exactly like a new district. They would get cohort 1 would get 60 hours in year 1, 40 in year 2, 24 in year 3, for a total of 124. Cohort 2, total of 64. Cohort 3, total of 24. However, if you just want to continue on the track that you've been moving on in Circle, and you want to continue with your professional learning providers and just keep working with the coaching and the implementation of that, and learning more about that so that your teachers are really implementing strongly, then the way those hours look is that would be all teachers, and that would be all teachers getting 30 year 1, 30 year 2, and 24 year 3. So every teacher would get a total of 84. If you choose to do a combination of the two, then you can propose a plan for how that would look, and that would have to be, we would have to approve that once awards were given, and make sure that your plan meets all the requirements of the grant. This is a professional learning grant, and so lots of professional learning hours are required. However, professional learning is not just sitting in front of a professional learning trainer in this grant. You absolutely will need to do that because you are required to have a professional learning provider. However, there are other things where your teachers can get hours that count toward the required professional learning for striving readers for KyCL. So first of all, I want to make sure you know that every professional learning that your teachers are getting, that all does have to be approved by KDE grant administrators. That's me, Dana Steele, and Danielle Ward. We would look through your plan and we would approve what you're going to be using. Also, everything that you do in professional learning has to be clearly outlined in that district and school literacy plan. So if you ask us for permission, approval to use different types of professional learning, then we will always look at the district literacy plan and school literacy plan. It needs to be very clearly written what your goals are and how that professional learning is going to support it. It has to be focused on literacy, and it has to be based on what your county really needs. We don't want any professional learning to be a one-time event. I know that just as a side note, I'm sure every one of you have been to professional learning trainings and you have thought it's awesome and you've written down all of these great ideas that you fully plan to implement when you get back to your schools. But what ends up happening over time is you get flooded with all the other stuff that you have to do. And many times, even though those were great and you had full intention of implementing them, it doesn't get implemented. And this is not that kind of grant. This is a kind of grant that wants professional learning to be extensive, ongoing, having support through coaching and different types of meetings we'll talk about in a minute that are really supporting that implementation. And so professional learning should not be a one-time event. There should be a plan that teachers are really going to learn from that and change their practice because of whatever professional learning that they're exposed to. This professional learning can happen before school, it can happen during school, and it can happen after school. And I will tell you that there are some schools that stipends are allowed in this grant. However, let me go back and say that means stipends for teachers who are doing things outside of the school day. However, we really suggest that you think very, very carefully about that, because once you start keeping in mind you have 100% of your teachers who will have to be on board. Once you start paying stipends to teachers, a lot of times they're going to expect that. And if you take a look at the amount of money that stipends pull out of your total budget, it can be a lot. So we highly suggest that you think of other things. There are some schools in the past in Circle that have just come up with a flat amount that they give for the different cohorts rather than paying them hour by hour. There are some that do things like say, if you're a part of cohort 1, then we're going to spend our grant resources to buy you literacy resources to help with your implementation in your room. And so there are, or if you're in cohort 2, it might look a little different. So just be really thinking about that, because your professional learning can occur before, during, and after school. But be super careful when you're thinking about how you want to spend that money, and think through not just year 1, but think through all years, because what you start as far as stipends or not, that really needs to continue throughout the life of your grant. I don't know if you've ever been involved in a project, and we had a few schools that had a lesson learned in Circle that they started it stipends and realized that that was not best use of their money and had to scale back on it. It made a lot of people really upset. So please think through the full life of the grant when you're thinking about that aspect. One of the things you can include for hours, your hours do not only have to be sit and get with a professional learning provider. What you can also include is professional learning communities focused on reading and writing. So if you are planning for literacy instruction using KY standards, if you're focused, if that meeting is focused on literacy strategies learned, if you're looking at student literacy work, literacy data, you're planning next steps and setting literacy goals, all those can count toward professional learning hours. So the hours are not just with the professional learning provider, it's the focus that's put on the school and the time that's put in the school towards implementation can also count towards that hours. Now, I will tell you that when I say implementation, I don't mean teaching. Teachers cannot get professional learning hours for teaching in their classrooms. What they do get professional learning hours for is collaborating with other teachers in their building, with a literacy coach in their building, with coaches from some of the professional learning providers include coaching, working with those coaching. Those kinds of things can earn hours. If you have who is awesome implementing a different strategy and they model for other people, or teachers who visit that person modeling and they spend time discussing the lesson, that can count towards professional learning hours. Time spent training parents or attending family and community literacy events can count towards required PL hours. Time spent collaborating with other levels, other grades focused on literacy can count toward required PL. A big push in this grant is to have our early learning providers who don't normally even get into the school to form a partnership with our kindergarten teachers and our primary teachers in the school. So having time meetings where they get together and they talk about what do we expect kiddos to know when they get to kindergarten, and here's how you can, what you can do in your daycare to support that. Those are all things that can count towards professional learning. So professional learning hours are required from a professional learning provider. And when you use a professional learning provider, you pay for them out of grant funds that your district is awarded. You have to have a professional learning provider. However, all of these other things listed are ways that teachers can also earn professional learning hours. So when you're listening to the vendors today, and when you're all the videos, and when you contact them, talk to them about their plan. How many hours of professional learning will they give per year? What would that look like as far as coaching that maybe they can support? And think about all those hours, and then think about, so now how many hours do we have remaining that the teachers are going to need? And be thinking about how that could be structured in your plan. Thinking through the whole 3 years of the grant is the best way to view this grant, not just only thinking about year one. How is the professional learning going to be extensive, focused on reading and writing, comprehensive literacy? How is it going to support teachers in implementation and really make a change in their teaching practice, not a one-time event? I've already said this, but just one more time to remind you that you do have to have a professional learning provider at each level. And you have to choose somebody off the approved provider grid that is included in the RFA. They're just listed. There is a list of approved providers. You can get in KyCL pre-approval to use another professional learning provider right from the beginning. And we're going to talk more about that a little bit later, but you do have to use a professional learning provider. So let's take a look at some of them. This is for early childhood. These are people who are on our approved provider list. We've included their contact information, and then there will also be a link later this afternoon to the vendor fair videos where they are going to be talking about what they're doing. So the Early Language and Literacy Project, EELP, goes with Imagination Library. Imagination Library is something that you can spend grant funds on. However, your teachers need to be signed up for the Early Language and Literacy Project in order to learn about Imagination Library. Keith Lyons is the connection, and there is his email address. The Governor's Office of Early Childhood has connected with the grant. And if you're a person who's ever worked in the early child care field, you know that they have to get ECE TRIS hours every year. And if an ECE TRIS hours professional learning is focused on reading and writing comprehensive literacy, if it's focused on that, then they would be able to go to those ECE TRIS professional learnings, and they could be able to get their professional learning hours that are required for KyCL, but they would also be earning the hours that they are required to earn every year anyway by getting those hours. We're going to connect you with the Governor's Office of Early Childhood, and if you have any questions, you can contact Amy Neal. They have listservs that give all of the trainings available in the state so that you could see how that may be something that your early childhood providers could tap into. There's a connection for Head Start. And then we also have a connection for Artful Reading. That's for early reading CTL. In Circle, when Circle started out, CTL did not have that for early. But now they have that program for early as well as elementary. And so they are a provider for early. And the contact information for CTL is also listed there. These are all people that are already on the RFA, and they're listed on the RFA. Here's some other professional learning providers for elementary. They are also already on the RFA. Artful Reading. It has an elementary program, and their contact information is there. The Kentucky Reading Project, Keith Lyons' address is there. The Kentucky Writing Project, Gene Wolfe's address is there. And Literacy Design Collaborative, known as LDC, is all the contact is there. Any of those can be used for elementary without any extra approval, and they are listed on the RFA. For middle and high, the Adolescent Literacy Project, known as ALM through CTL, is a approved provider. The Literacy Design Collaborative, LDC, Kentucky Writing Project, and the Adolescent Literacy Project through CCLD. And all of the email addresses are there for you to contact them. You will also have videos to watch in the vendor fair about them. They are already approved and are on the RFA. If you choose to use them, you don't have to get any other special approval. We also have some other partners who you might want to consider. The National Center for Families Learning provides information for how to work with families and training for how to work with families. They actually are based in Louisville, Kentucky, although they are national and actually do even more work on a national level. You might want to watch that video, or please do watch that video, because I think you might get some really interesting ideas for how you can work with that birth to age 5 group, and how you can join families in and do things with the families to engage them in learning. So they are one of our professional learning providers as well. And if you can use money through the grant to pay for their services, they also have a lot of free things. You do not need an extra approval to use them. They have already been approved. Danielle, do you want to talk about national boards?
Absolutely. I'm a national board certified teacher, and I can attest that it was probably the best professional learning I have ever engaged in. We do not have a specific person to contact for national board certification. However, you can visit their website at mbpts.org. Teachers can find ways to certify in a specific area on the website. There are dozens of areas to certify in, from early childhood through secondary. I'm certified in early adolescent literature, and I have also served with the National Board in creating standards for English certification. So it is a wonderful opportunity for teachers to really learn how to be better teachers. And it has 4 modules. I think the total price is around $2,500 per teacher. And if they are nationally board certified, I think they used to receive that money back. So it's a win-win situation. You can go there to nbpts.org for more information. And it would be great if you had several teachers who were interested in their national board certification, and they could create their own little national board cohort and work on it together as a support system in your district. The fact is that teachers who have their national board certification have better student outcomes, higher student achievement than those who do not. So it's certainly something to look into, and it's wonderful that this grant will pay for that certification.
So I mentioned a little earlier that there is additional programs outside of what's already approved, outside of the professional learning that's already approved, that you can choose in KyCL, and that is different from Circle. You did not have that option. You had to choose someone off of that approved provider grid And then if you had money left over and there was other professional learning that complemented what you were doing, you could ask for approval to do that. However, in KyCL, one of the differences is that you can fill out an elevating evidence forms, and you can turn that in for approval to use a different professional learning provider right from the beginning. We are going to have the elevating evidence forms are already uploaded on the KDE Competitive Grants website. And we are going to have a specific training on October 22nd that's going to give you really detailed information about what you need in that elevating evidence process. I suggest that you take a look at the forums, and if you are interested in any other professional learning provider that is not listed on the RFA, I suggest that you come to this training and we'll talk to you about what is required to be a part or to request approval for using a different professional learning provider. Danielle?
Okay, so back to professional learning. The KyCL grant is a professional learning grant, as we've said several times. And so the process is to learn new strategies or learn new ideas, put those into practice, and then evaluate those results. That's what best practice is all about. The wonderful thing is that for the professional learning hours that you need to accumulate, you can get credit for evaluating the results and putting it into practice as long as you are collaborating with others. So if you have a group of teachers who are working on a specific strategy that they've learned, and they get together in a PLC and evaluate those results, they can use that collaboration time in planning and evaluating as a part of their professional learning hours. So there are multiple ways to get the professional learning hours that are required for this grant, and collaboration is part of that. Now, let's talk about grant partners. The KyCL grant requires early childhood partners, and they should fit this mold. They can be independent, home-based, and faith-based childcare, private preschool providers, Head Start centers, and public school preschools. The KyCL grant would like for you to include, at a minimum, at least as many early literacy programs as elementary school sites. So if you have 2 elementary schools in your feeder system, then we'd like for you to also consider to have at least 2 early literacy programs involved as well. Early childhood partners are included in the professional learning cohorts. So this grant will pay for professional learning for daycare workers and preschool workers who are, not affiliated with your public school necessarily, but are part of your community. 16% of KyCL grant funds are used to support professional learning for early childhood. So this is a large part of the grant. It's an area that we don't often think about, but literacy starts in that birth to 5 age range, and so this grant wants to include that age range. So you'll need to reach out to independent, home-based or faith-based child cares, private preschools. Maybe you have a Head Start center in your area, and then your public school preschools as well. We have a question from Washington County, and they say, do district-based early childhood providers count as partners? Yes. Yes, they do. The KyCL requires community grant partners as well. And so earlier we had talked about the need for partners in your district literacy plan. So these are some partners that you can think about, including nonprofit and for-profit agencies that provide literacy and pre-literacy services, your public libraries, after-school programs, mentoring programs, civic organizations, family engagement support, as well as your county health departments. So let's talk about these for just a second. When we say that you're going to partner with these people in your community, it doesn't mean, for instance, that the grant will pay for transportation to go to a public library or go to an after-school program. That's not what the grant is about. The grant is about professional learning. So, for instance, if you have an after-school program, the grant would pay for professional learning for those people who work in the after-school programs, or it would pay for professional learning for mentors that are working in a mentoring program that you've established in your feeder system. I know many people like to use the county health departments, and they can work with the county health departments to provide information to new families through many of their departments that they use there, like the HANDS program that they have. They'll provide books for babies and small children. I know in one district, they chose to use the Artful Reading program, and they included their public library so that their public librarian could also use Artful Reading with the children who were homeschooled in that area. So there are lots of ways that you can partner with community members and provide that professional learning for those community members to reach out to students who may not, or to children who may not be involved in that feeder system. We have another question in the chat box, and it said to include at least 2 early literacy programs. Does this mean partners or actual programs?
Partners.
Yes, Dana.
It is partners.
Partners, that's correct.
Yes, it is partners.
So the goal for community partners is to support increased literacy achievement for birth to grade 12. So if you'll keep that in mind, as well as the fact that this is a professional learning grant, that will help gear your mind to what this grant is all about.
Another thing about community partners you might want to consider is that when you're thinking of birth to age 5, that is a lot of time where you need to get families who are not necessarily involved with the school yet. They may not have any school-age children yet, and you want to get them involved in teaching them about literacy, how they can support their growing babies. And a lot of times these community partners can be really helpful in coming up with family engagement events. They can help advertise family engagement events because people that come into the health department might see a post up there that gives information about a family engagement event that's going to happen. And so be creative in thinking about how these, how people around your community can help you, and to not only to provide things for school-age children, but to really engage those families that might be a little trickier for you to connect with since they don't have children in school.
Then we also have commitment letters from partners that would need to be submitted with your RFA. And so you'll see there, depending on your district size, you'll have a certain number of partners that you need to connect with. A small district, we'd like to see 3 partners. A medium district, 5 partners. And a large district, at least 7. Now, in these partner commitment letters, the partners should include their reason for participating in the project, which, is just to increase literacy in the community. The partner letters should also include a plan for how the district and the partners will work together to increase literacy achievement. What are you going to do together to increase literacy? And then a commitment to work with the district and or the school literacy leadership teams.
So now we're going to talk just a little bit about just some things. These are some things that are in the RFA, but we just want to go through a couple of things for you to keep in mind. These are some things that you need to keep in mind when you're applying, things that you will do. When you're a part of this grant, you will have to establish or maintain previous district literacy leadership teams. You need to include early education providers and community partners, which you may not have done before, to assist in that development and implementation of that district literacy plan. So that's something that you will be required to do in this grant. You also need to explain through the RFA assurances and the narrative how other funding sources that you already have and initiatives that you already have in your district can align with KyCL. You need to demonstrate specific needs related to high poverty and at-risk groups in that feeder system. And so you need to talk about that in your RFA. What is your need and how are you going to reach those special populations in all of your levels? Also, how are you going to support participating schools and early education partners by demonstrating a commitment to improving the literacy achievement of all learners, particularly disadvantaged? So in the grant narrative, that's something that you'll want to make sure that you talk through, the requirements for the grant. After you're awarded, keep in mind that you will have to provide time for teachers and partners to attend professional learning opportunities directed at supporting the literacy plan, improving literacy achievement, and accelerating literacy performance. So be thinking about what would that look like, because that would be, you would have to provide them that time for that professional learning they need. So be thinking about that and be able to address that in your RFA. You're going to have to build literacy leadership capacity among the administrators and the instructional leaders. So be thinking about that. What will you do to make sure that your administrators and your instructional leaders build literacy leadership capacity? This is not only for teachers, it absolutely is for the administrators in the building. So this wouldn't be the type of professional learning that administrators can get it started and then leave to go do other things. They would really want to be involved in this, because to be literacy leaders in their building, they need to have the training too, and they need to know what's expected of the teachers. And so they would be, how's that going to look in your district? You also, as an awarded district, will have to participate in state and federal program evaluations when they're requested. There'll be some self-evaluation and monitoring. There's going to be desk monitoring, which involves you uploading documents to a KyCL Google Classroom for us to take a look at. There's going to be online surveys, interviews, and other data collection as requested. Those are all things that you'll need to do if you're awarded. Here are some things that are allowable, and some of these things are required. So let's talk about these. You will have to have an implementation of that, and some of this is a repeat of what we've already talked about, but just for a reminder, this is in the RFA if you want to take a look at this too. You have to have an implementation of an approved, comprehensive, and coherent literacy plan that's aligned to the standards and serves birth to grade 12. It's got to include each of the components of comprehensive literacy. And you must ensure that the programs align across and within bands, within all of the bands of the birth to grade 12, it needs to all align. So be thinking about that. And I do want to go back to the word approved here. When you turn in a literacy plan in your application, if it's blinded, will be scored, and the top scores will be awarded the grant. But as soon as the grant is awarded, then every district will work with Danielle and I, and we will go through your literacy plan and make sure that everything written in there really aligns with the intent and the focus of the grant. Sometimes when people are writing the RFAs, they have a limited knowledge of the grant, and so they put in ideas there that seem to be good ideas, but when they learn more information about the intent of the grant, sometimes those have to be tweaked a little bit. So I just want to make sure you know that just because you turn in a plan and just because you're awarded doesn't mean that everything in that plan you'll be able to do. We'll sit down with your district and we'll talk through every aspect of your plan and make sure that you're clear on the grant and that your plan reflects that. Want to make sure that your professional learning and comprehensive literacy is aligned to selected literacy programs, including instructional strategies for learners with special needs. So make sure that you're addressing special needs, the ELL, special education, children with characteristics of dyslexia, and make sure you're thinking about all of those things when you're writing this, because you will be required to state in your plan and implement in your plan strategies that are going to help these kiddos. You also can implement one or more interventions that align to this, to your literacy program and your literacy plan. So that's one of the things you're allowed to do. If you want to use money from the grant to implement interventions for children, you absolutely can do that. Please keep in mind that if there's something you are already using in your district, grant money would not just pick up and start paying for that. The grant money is intended to be used for new initiatives, but it absolutely can be used for intervention. Remember that the instructional resources connected to professional learning and aligned to the CAS for reading and writing are all part of this as well. Everything needs to be aligned to CAS. A balanced assessment system. If your district does not already have valid and reliable screening, diagnostic, formative, and progress monitoring aligned to CAS, then you can use money to pay for that. You can also use money to pay for looking at the data. If teachers are looking at literacy data and making plans for children next steps, you can use grant money for that as well.
So let's talk about competitive preference priorities. When you're writing your grant application, the RFAs are scored, and you can specifically mention these particular these priorities in your district, and you'll get extra points if you discuss how your plan will address these children. So serving disadvantaged children is the first priority. The second one is alignment of birth to 5th grade. And the third is homelessness, foster, or grandparenting. And then in the next slides, we're going to talk a little bit about each one. So competitive preference priority number 1, serving disadvantaged children. To meet competitive preference priority number 1, an applicant clearly identifies the numbers or percentages of disadvantaged children, including children living in poverty, English learners, and children with disabilities, including dyslexia, as defined in the RFA. This competitive preference should be noted specifically in the pages of the narrative, and then the Department of Education will determine the application of points based on proposals submitted. The competitive preference priority number 2 is alignment of birth to 5th grade. To ensure alignment of birth to age 5 and kindergarten to grade 5, the KDE will award up to an additional 5 points for applicants who have demonstrated in their proposals a significant focus on alignment to early learning. This may be demonstrated through the numbers and types of partnerships with early learning providers, including but not limited to the proportional number of early learning partners to be included in this project. Demonstrated through high quality letters of interest. Those are your partner letters. This competitive preference should be noted specifically in the pages of the narrative. The Department of Education will award these competitive points based on the number and quality of early learning partners. So keep that in mind. And then the third competitive preference priority focuses on homelessness, fostering, and grandparenting. To meet competitive preference priority number 3, an applicant clearly identifies the numbers or percentages of school-aged children with high mobility, including homelessness, foster, and grandparented students. For homelessness, districts must meet or exceed a level of 125% of the state's rate. This competitive preference should be noted specifically in the pages of the narrative. The KDE will determine the application of points based on proposals submitted.
Okay, so let's talk about when you are applying for this grant. You need to make sure that you review everything in the RFA very carefully. You need to make sure that you get signatures on all the documents where they're needed. You need to make sure you complete all of the extra attachments to the RFA, the feeder school document, the GEPRA statement, and that GEPRA 427 statement is just a description on how you propose to ensure equitable access to, wait a second. Excuse me. And participation in federally assisted programs for students, teachers, and other beneficiaries with special needs. So gender, race, national origin, color, disability, age. And if you want to sample GEPRA, if you look online and just Google GEPRA letters, you'll see some samples. And just make sure you follow all the requirements listed, and please, please, please make sure that you blind copy your RFA. It is something that we have always asked for, but every now and then something slipped through, and that will no longer be allowed if there is anything that is not blind copied. Even a name of a school or a name of someone in one of the forms, it will not be graded. So please, please make sure that you blind copy everything in that second copy. I did notice that somebody put a question in and they said, can you give a stipend to a literacy coach at each school? And I want to address that real quickly. So you can give stipends to teachers who are doing extra things related to the grant. And you could give stipends to a literacy coach at each school. However, there's some things I want you to think about. If you have a literacy coach at the school, their job should be to be promoting literacy at their school anyway. So that really should already be their job to promote literacy at their school. However, there are some schools that we have in Kentucky that have literacy coaches that are also teachers, but then they're trying to do a duty of a literacy coach on the side. If that's the case and they're not a full-time literacy coach that gets their salary by being a literacy coach, if they're trying to literacy coach on the side, you are allowed to give them a stipend. But I do want to give you a caution. One of the things that is super important in any grant, and this grant as well, is communications. And there have been some districts who have tried the route of giving stipends to literacy coaches and basically letting that person oversee all aspects of the grant in their school. And we have had some concerns where since there was nobody at the district, and in those cases, those were people that instead of having a district person dedicated to be responsible as a grant manager, they left it up to the schools. The implementation was not as strong as it could be. The communication was not as strong as it could be. And so I just really want you to think about that. If you were doing something like that, I would highly suggest that you at least had a grant manager from the district level who is overseeing everything. This grant is a lot of money, and there's a lot that needs to be overseen, and putting it on a teacher who is just doing extra duties outside of school has not been very successful in these grants in the past. However, if you had a grant manager who was overseeing everything and handling all of the money and all of the reports that needed to be turned into KDE, and then they were giving some duties to a literacy coach, such as all teachers will have to do professional learning logs where they will have to record every professional learning hour that they've gotten up to the maximum or the minimum amount required by KyCL. A nice job for a literacy coach who could potentially get a stipend at a school would be to oversee the professional learning logs. But it has not worked well in the past to have no grant manager at the district level and to have schools trying to handle those themselves, especially when it was someone else at the schools. For example, we have a district that has an assistant principal who is trying to do everything. They be the grant manager plus everything else. Those are very, very hard. This grant is not only is a lot of money, it takes a lot of time to do it right and to really put the focus on changing teacher practice and coordinating everything that's going on in the district, including what's going on with birth to grade 5 or age 5, and then being able to have good transitions between what's going on in elementary and middle and high. It really takes a grant manager to do that. And so it's just something that, for you to really think about. And of course, when you turn in the RFA, it'll be scored. But when if you were an awarded district, that would be something that we would look really carefully with you and decide what's going to be the best use of your money at your district and the best way that you can support the goal of the district or the goal of the grant and the goals of your district literacy plans. So let's take a look now at some of the other, feel free to type in any questions in the chat box that you may have, but I want us to talk real quickly about the RFA other days that we're going to be talking about or giving you information about this grant. So remember tomorrow what we're going to do let me just say for the rest of the day and tomorrow, when we're finished with this, you will be on your own given links to videos that you will be able to go to. So even though on the RFA it says 9 to 3 both days, you will be on your own watching videos. However, this Teams meeting will be open all day, and there will be another one open all day tomorrow, so that if you have any questions about vendors, you may ask. I would like to make sure you know that you can't ask when we're open to give you technical assistance about the videos. That is not the time when you can ask questions about personal things related to your district. Once the RFA posts, which it posts on October 1st, then all questions and answers have to be done in an open format. So if you attend any of our technical assistance sessions and you ask a question, we can answer it. And so, but we cannot answer it privately the rest of today and tomorrow if you just happen to get on. So just want to make sure you know that there's a difference in that. So what we would be available for is making sure you can get on those videos. So on the 22nd, we've already mentioned this, but on Thursday the 22nd, that's when we're going to talk about vetting additional programs. If you would like to use a different professional learning provider than the ones listed in the RFA and the ones that we've talked about today, I highly suggest you come to that, because we'll be talking about the elevating evidence forms that you will need to send, that you'll need to turn in. And I will tell you that those are due, and it shows clearly in the RFA, those are due prior to the submission of the grant. The other thing, the reason it's in red is this is new. And if you look on the Competitive Grants website, you'll notice that we have a date change. The online question and answers, that's going to be a Teams meeting where you can just unmute and ask questions. You can chat and ask questions. You can ask anything you want to us at that time. But we changed that because it was on election day, and we wanted it to be more accessible to more people. So it is in red. It's going to be November 4th and not the date that was listed previously. And if you go back to the RFA, the KDE Competitive Grants website, and you look up the RFA, you'll see that that has been changed. I want to make sure you know that. Also saw that someone has just sent an email that said, can you send private messages? And I will tell you that the answer is you cannot send a private message to Danielle, or you cannot send a private message to me. But what you can do is you can go into that KDE RFP at education.ky.gov. That is right now in the chat box. Jennifer Bryant put that in the chat box. You can go into that right now and at any point and pose a question. And if it's a question that you need to know prior to the online question and answer sessions and prior to us posting questions and answers, then you could go to that box and send a question, but you cannot send anything to Danielle or I. We're not allowed to answer any questions once the grant posts. So we'll have another question and answer. So we'll have one on the 4th that I just showed. That's in the new date. We'll have another one on the 5th. And again, you'll just be able to come and ask us questions, put them in the chat box or ask us. And what we will be doing, in case you're not able to go to those questions, is we will be typing up every question someone asks, and we will type the answer, and that will be posted to the KDE Competitive Grants website by November 27th. So any question that we've been asked will be on the website by November 27th. And so if you want to, you could go to that and see if there are any questions that maybe you hadn't thought of were answered, or questions that maybe you wanted to know as well happen to be there. The other thing that is on the schedule is Friday, November 6th is when that elevating evidence forms are due. So we'll be having the training, and then they will be due, like I had mentioned before, prior to submitting your application. And you will also get information about if they were approved or not prior to submitting your RFA as well. Wednesday and Thursday, November 18th and 19th, those are going to be days when we talk about, if you're writing this grant, these are some things that you might want to make sure you include. So those are just assistance for writing a grant. And so we'll do it for part of the day, 9 to 12 on the 18th, and then part 2 will be 9 to 12 on the 19th. So notice this is part 1 and 2. They are going to be different. And so if you are interested in just thinking through, how does this grant really need to be written, and what are some things that I really need to keep in mind when I'm writing this grant to get the most points possible, then I suggest that you come to those technical assistants, and they are going to be different. So that is on November 18th and November 19th. And then on the 20th is Friday, November 20th is your deadline for submitting questions. So if you want to send any questions to that KDE RFP box, you need to make sure you do that by Friday, November 20th. Then I also want to make you aware that there are 2 date changes because the date that we put fell on Thanksgiving break. Just want to let you know that if you turn in elevating evidence packet, the person who submits it is going to get an email by Tuesday, November 24th to let you know whether your request to use a different professional learning provider was approved or not. Also, every question and answer that we gathered and have answered are going to be posted on November 24th so that you can take a look at that. And then Wednesday, December 16th is the proposal deadline. Make sure you have that in mind. That is, when we say deadline, that's a firm deadline. So I would highly suggest that you think about submitting that early, and that you keep in mind that, even if there's technology issues, we still have that firm deadline. So you might want to think really carefully about going ahead and submitting your RFA prior to that date. And then on or around March 17th, we are going to post the people who receive the award on the KDE website. And then for this grant, the funding will begin July 1st, 2021. So if you're awarded this grant, Then July 1st, 2021 is when you can start receiving funding. And just one more time, let me just make sure that I say that any question has to be directed to this email address, the KDE RFP email address, and then you will receive an answer for that. And then now let's talk about the vendor fair, and that the vendor fair is what we're calling the time that you're going to have this afternoon and the time anytime tomorrow. Although these links for the vendor fair will be up and you can access them at any point, but we just have got a dedicated time ourselves to be available for you with that Teams meeting open so that you can get with us and ask questions if you're unable to see a video. These videos will also be posted at a later date to the KDE Competitive Grants website under the RFA, so they will also be available for there if anybody wants to look at them. Danielle, would you like to talk about this?
Sure. So as Diana had said, we will be available on this Teams meeting in case you have any trouble accessing the videos or the website for the vendor fair. If you click on that Google Doc, everything has been uploaded there and is organized for early elementary, early childhood, elementary, and then middle and high. And so if you have any questions about the vendor videos, we'll be here to answer those till 3 o'clock today and from 9 to 3 o'clock tomorrow. But you can look at those at your convenience and decide how you're going to include these vendors. You can look at what they have to offer and see if it meets your needs.
So right now I am going to change what's on the desktop just to show you real quickly what you're going to see when you go to that, when you go to the page for the links. And there's also, while I'm going to that, I'm seeing someone has asked a question about if they're already using LDC, can we continue using them? Is yes, if you're already using a provider, then you absolutely can continue with that provider. However, I really suggest that you spend some time talking to that provider so that you can make sure that they have what you need to support you over 3 more years. And so just talk with them about specifics, like what do they have to offer and what would it look like? But yes, absolutely. If you're already using a vendor, you can continue using that vendor. However, I will say, like that I said in the beginning, if you are, I highly suggest you watch these videos. They are all less than 30 minutes. And when you take a look at the videos, it'll give you some information about other providers. And it could give you information about providers, maybe something that you didn't know existed, maybe something that if you're a continuation district, it may give you some ideas of training that would complement what you're already doing. And so that's something that you just might want to consider is going ahead and watching these so that you can have information. So if you look at this, can you see my screen, Danielle?
Yes.
All right.
Yes, there.
Okay, so here's the early childhood vendors, and you'll see it tells you who the vendor is, who the contact is, and then it gives you a link in the website that you can go. And that's for our birth to 5. And then here's our elementary, that's kindergarten through 5th grade. So the videos for that. And then here's our middle and high vendors. And you can see the vendor contact, and the vendor link. So I put in the morning when we started, before we started, I put a link to these. And so you can go to this. And there's also a link to the PowerPoint that we used today. I will tell you that there were a couple little things in there that I'm going to go in there and change. So just to make sure that things are clear, things that I noticed along the way. So I'm going to go in there and I'm going to change that a little bit. It'll automatically change. It's a Google document, so it'll automatically change on that link. But if you happen to go ahead and print like that, then you won't have the most up-to-date copy. The other thing is, just let me say again, if you happen to print the RFA when it was originally posted, you might want to go in and reprint that because it was just updated this week with those new dates.
Dana, we have 2 questions in the chat. They ask if they can share the link for the vendor fair today with their school leadership so they can watch level-specific videos.
And the answer is yes, and that is an awesome idea. I think that it would be absolutely awesome for you to share those videos with your school leadership so that you can get people on board. One of the things that has happened in the past when Circle first got started is we noticed that there were districts that made a plan and they were so excited about their plan, but what they forgot to do is they forgot to share the planning of that with their administrators in their schools. And so what happened is all of a sudden they turned in the RFA without getting input. They were awarded the grant, and then they went to the teachers and said, this is what your teachers need to do. This is what we committed to. And we had some principals that were not too happy. So I absolutely would suggest that you get school leadership on board right now, and that they're a part of the planning of this, and they are on board and excited about what this grant can do for their school and how it can make a change in teacher practice and how it can help increase achievement for their kiddos. And so yes, absolutely, that is a very, very important part of this grant. It is a lot of money, a lot of time commitment, and it works best and really only works when you have school leadership and teachers that are completely on board. So yes, absolutely.
And the next question, Dana, is where do they find the link to the PowerPoint?
So the link to the PowerPoint was also in the link this morning. Like if you go all the way up to the beginning of the chat, you're going to see a link to the PowerPoint, and you're also going to see a link to the vendor fair. They're both Google Drives, and so when I go in and change a couple little things, nothing big, it was things I told you, like I noticed that an age was left off, a number was left off or something. I'm just going to fix it, but it'll automatically update for you as well. So that link, I'll do that here in just a few minutes when we're finished, and that link will be, that link is there. So if you don't see it, someone say they don't see it, the link at the top?
Yeah, they said they don't see the link in the chat.
Okay. All right. Well, it is in the very beginning of the, it's in the very beginning of the chat, and we will look through and we will repost that. This Teams meeting is going to be opened. We're just going to leave it completely opened until 3 o'clock today. And so we'll go back and make sure that we put that in again. I'll just put that in again right here. And you can, you can go to that at any point today and find that. The way Teams meeting works, if you haven't used Teams before, is if you can go in and out of the link the whole time the meeting is open. So you can leave this link and eat lunch and then come back after, and if you want to, and if you want to read anything that anybody said in the chats, that'll still be open for you. And we'll still be here to answer questions, and so it'll be there for you. So Danielle has reposted the link to the Google document for
and I'm
the
getting ready to post the link to the PowerPoint as well.
Okay, great. Okay, great. Does anybody have any other questions? Please be writing down questions and thinking through this whenever you're, and like I said, when we can answer questions. We can't answer any more questions this afternoon or tomorrow because it has to be an open format with anybody who wants to come invited. But we will be able to, as soon as we have those 2 question and answer days, we can answer questions, or you can send them to the website, the KDERFP website, if you would like to do that. Thank you so much for coming, and I hope we gave you some really good information. I just want to say one more time, if you're in Circle, you're going to be a continuation district, and so really look carefully at the RFA where it mentions continuation, because yours is a little different. And I highly suggest that you go to the place where you get scored, like at the very end of the RFA, or towards the end, where it talks to you about how many points you get for different things. If you're a continuation, you've got to answer something just a little bit different. You've got to answer how things have gone in circle and what you're going to do to continue the work that you've been doing or complement the work that you're going to be doing. There's lots of questions within the scoring that ask about that. So just be really careful to answer all of those questions. We have some really good providers. And I'm excited for you guys to get to watch the videos. And like I said, I hope that you'll decide to watch all of them, because I think that sometimes we know things that are out there, but things are always changing. And we have some really awesome professional learning providers. And I know that, and it may give you some new ideas for how you can continue things or start things in your district.
Dana, we have another question in the chat. It says, if we are a continuing district and we choose a new provider for just a portion of our teachers, would they be in a cohort model while the remaining teachers would continue work started in year one with a continuation model of professional learning hours?
So Amy, that's something that I would like for you to think through what makes the most sense and put that in your RFA. But then if you were awarded, we would talk about this. So if you're going to continue on, I will say, so if you're continuing on, if you're continuation model, people are continuing on, then you would follow that 30 hours year one, 30 hours year two, 24 hours year three. You would. However, what I understand you saying is that some teachers, a portion, would be doing something different. If the portion is doing something different, it might make more sense to do them all together and put them in cohort one, because if they're doing something new, they're going to need the more extensive training. And so putting all of them in cohort one, where they get the 60, the 40, the 20, the 40, and 24, that might be your best bet. So really think through that. Those are the kind of things that when you're a continuation, you're probably going to have some different situations, and we're probably going to need to talk through that. So really figure out, what do you feel is going to be best for your teachers, keeping in mind this is professional learning grant. And so it does require an extensive amount of professional learning over an extended period of time to really change teacher practice, which is our goal. So be thinking about that. But I will tell you that if they're just continuing on, then just follow that grid that talks about the 30, 30, 24. If it's new though, I don't know if you would want to divide them into cohorts, but maybe. So really think through that and figure out how you would want that to look, Amy. And then if you're you would, in your RFA, you would completely discuss your plan. It is not the job of the people who are scoring your RFA to score you based on something like that. They score you based on, do you have all the information? Do you have a solid plan? Do you have partners like are requested? How do you plan to use those? Everything that's listed in the way that scores are done towards the end of the RFA, that's what they use to score you. That's why you should be super careful that you give a really good plan, because they don't know what you've done in the past. They can't read your mind. And so everything has to be very clear to get the most points you can in the RFA. But what they won't do is they would not knock you down points for not following that grid for continuation exactly. Because there is the RFA even says clearly that you could do one of two things. You could go brand new. You can continue on, or you could do a hybrid of both. And the hybrid of both could look different. And so just be super clear in your plan with what you want to do. And then if you're awarded, we would talk with you very specifically about what you're choosing to do. Sometimes we've worked with so many districts. I can look at plans a lot of times and see where there maybe there's concerns that you haven't thought about and bring them up. And so we would definitely talk through that. Any other questions today?
The RFA, it has already gone live.
It has. It was posted on October 1st, and so the RFA is there. And the RFA, the updated one was updated just a couple days ago, but there has always been one there since October 1st. And the only thing that changed was some dates, because some of those dates corresponded to holidays, and we did not want that. So it's up right now. You'll know if you've got the new one because it says in real dark red that it's the new one. But it's up right now, so you can go and print that out to get more information about the grant. Well, if nobody else has any questions, Danielle and I will stay on here, like I said, throughout the day to help if you need to get on the vendor videos. One of us will be here to help you. We can't answer any more questions like we've been doing, but we will be able to help you with getting on the vendor videos. So please let us know if you need anything at all. I know that when you leave here, you're going to have lots of questions, but remember, you can attend our question and answer session. You can also send them to that KDE RFA mailbox and get your questions answered in that way. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it, and I really I hope that we were able to help you and give you some really useful information. So you guys have a great rest of the day. Let us know if you need anything at all.
Thank you.
Thanks.